Xing and I met about 4 years ago when we were very fortunate to be approached by Lian Foundation to start up a second centre at the Caterpillar's Cove, which was supposed to be the second child study centre. So my principal, Cynthia, went onto Google and she Googled lacquer design, I think at that time. And we met with Xing and Josh. And then it was history in the making because we were very aligned in the way we were thinking. We were very into research. So it's not just the design, but what does the research tell us about how children grow and develop. So that's how we started.
Yeah, it was a really nice way of getting a relationship started, because I think when we first came to visit you at your first center, at that time Josh and I, our older two kids were little and they were in preschool as well, and so we were really in that, I think, in that sort of headspace and in that emotional space to really sort of empathize, I think, with what all the goals that you had for the school, and we kind of could look through all that with that lens of being parents of young kids. And I mean, that's all in addition to this interesting research informing design. And I think what was nice is we kind of did a couple of rounds of sort of, it's almost like dating, where we like, oh, I like this, oh, I like that too. And then, you know, we kind of went through all quite a long set of meetings to make sure that we really liked each other and felt that we kind of thought in similar ways, and we knew that we could listen to each other, I think. And then after that, when we knew we really want to work together, then we had to go through the sort of formal procurement, and luckily it worked out and we got to design this project. Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons why this school has been so sort of wonderful, I guess, also in the Singaporean context, is that it was the first school where I think design was explicitly put forward as a requirement. I mean, when you guys came to us, it wasn't just, oh, make us another center. You said that it has to really use the design discipline to make this happen, right? And
this school is situated in an office building. So as you walk into the space, we didn't want the children to really have the experience of walking to an office building. I mean, they're too young to do that. So I think the challenge we posed to Lacquer was, how do you do this? And so that then when they walk into a space, it becomes magical, it becomes like a school. And the concept was really looking at also what was the constraints of the building. One, we were not able to bring the windows to the level of the children. The other one is we had so many pillars. And I think that the whole idea of a schoolyard and a schoolhouse worked really, really well, because I remember saying to you and Josh, the office has to be command center, you know, and then the rest of it, everything evolves around it. We need to know what's going on. And so the schoolhouse actually became the office, and then the schoolyard became all the classes, because one of the things that we wanted to keep is the openness of space. Because the value that we have is about community, building relationships and building community. So the pillars became actually trees, and then there was kind of like a canopy that was built over it. So that was very clever, I think, from a design perspective. And then we then decided, how do we then organize that space within each classroom to look that it could still function as a class, but at the same time keep the whole concept of this schoolhouse, schoolyard perspective.
Yeah. I remember when we first came to see the space, it was very stark, a little bit dismaying, you know, how do we scale it for the kids? And I think because we decided on that, because with that understanding that the office and the admin would really be command center, would be the schoolhouse that all the kids could see from any direction. We then found a way to scale down and in a way to tame this office unit, which had really, really high ceilings, right? And then the windows are also super high, and we were just thinking it's so alien to a child. So then, we employed iconography, you know, the house, the iconic house, gable house shape, iconic sort of tree branch shape. And I mean, these are a little bit cartoonish on purpose because we felt that that imageability for the children is really important, right? So, so that's what guided the overall sort of framework of it. But what we love also was, you know, at Cove you have this, I guess, this belief that people from all ages, from very young, should be treated with a sort of respect and dignity that they can kind of take care of themselves in a way, you know, treat them now the way that you want them to treat others later on, right? So even though they're really, really young, you believe that open plan is okay, and they should be, you should give them benefit of the doubt that they're not going to just, you know, run crazy and run into someone else's classroom or yell on the top of their voices and not think about other people. And that kind of teaching of respect for others, I think, because you are so you so strongly believe in it and you're able to enforce it kind of in the way that the school is run, it allowed us to build something like this. Whereas in a lot of other schools, there is a bit of a fear of, children getting distracted, for example, by stuff happening outside the classroom or like too much noise. And so we end up having to break everything up into little spaces. One of the things that informed the design was this study of ecology by Foreman, who was one of our teachers in school. And the idea is that, I mean, children, humans, like animals, I mean, we need to be able to have a safe sort of prospect of, you know, what we're going into. So the idea that you make these very sort of corrugated edges where you can sit with your back protected and kind of look at where you're about to go, and then before you make the decision to go for it, right? We kind of employed that in the design of the nooks, which are these little spaces carved out in the edges of the room or the edges of the classroom, and they're scaled for, as you said, like 1 or 2 or more than 2 kids to kind of sit there and, you know, make a decision themselves to kind of go for it. And when they do, then they're much more able to fully engage all their senses, I suppose, in what they're doing, and then be receptive to, you know, all this, the wonder and delight of the space. And I think that in terms then of creating wonder and delight, a lot of it is very simple. It's about turning to things like natural materials in as much as possible and not giving them too much information.
The shelf that you built, which is what we call 3-in-1, because Singapore is such an instant culture. Everything's like 2-in-1 or 3-in-1. Because I think space is premium where we live. And to have not just a functional shelf, but that whole idea of what you're talking about, that sense of wonder and delight. What can I do with this shelf? So when you built the one that had just big space, 4 big shelves, I came one day, and I don't operate this center, Cynthia does, right? So I walked in one day and I went into the 5-year-old classroom and I said to the children, "What are you doing?" They said to me, "We're building a bus." And I said, "Great." And in my mind as an educator, I'm thinking they'll have boxes and everything. So I did see the boxes. But what surprised me and delighted me as an educator was they used the boxes and they integrated it with the shelf. And they made this bus that looked really, really like the bus that we have, where, you know, you can pull down the seats and pull up the seats and stuff like that. So I think we need to give children that opportunity to have an apply what they see right around them. Every day they take the bus, or every day they walk through a space. But what does it mean then in their own imagination, and how then they can recreate it?
I mean, we really did try to support that with the environment. Even something simple like the view. If they have, say, the mounds or those nooks or the periscope from which to say, hey, I need to look outside of the school right now. I need to like go look at what's around me. They can do that. And they don't need to ask an adult for help, lift me up, you know. They don't have to do that. They can at any time sort of have control over their own experience of the environment. And that's very critical to being able to then, you know, engage all their senses in their imagination.
So through the periscope, through the nook and the mount, different children took different times of the day to actually figure out what was going on. And you could see the sense of wonderment and also the sense of making a guess. And it's always very exciting to make a guess, you know. It makes them very happy to come to school because at home I don't have this design of a periscope or a mount I could look out, maybe. But eventually it became like a nursery, a plant nursery, and we did this project with the 6-year-olds, right? And it was interesting because towards the end of the project, there was like a bet going on in the class of, I think it's going to be this, or I think it's going to be, and the whole anticipation of just looking out and seeing what's going to happen, and then bringing it back into the classroom and having a conversation and learning about hypothesis and plot and stuff like that. They wrote a story about it. Was really because the design of the space allowed that to happen. Yeah. We've had many visitors since. I mean, we are 4 years in operations at the moment, and we've had lots of people coming from overseas who are early childhood experts themselves, walking to the environment. Particularly the people from Europe, particularly people from America, because their classrooms in early childhood are just rooms. But they walk into our environment and they say, how does learning really happen? Because you can see the children being very focused and very attentive to what's going on in that space with the teacher or in small groups as they're working together. And it comes from the whole idea of self-regulation, because if you look at how how the world is moving, we go into offices now with mobile desks. I mean, hot desking. And people need to learn how to work with the noise and with the distractions. And if you can try to do that early in life, then they're much more prepared later on.
Yeah, but that's a risk, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you're willing to take this risk, and I think that's also one of the joys for us, working together on this, was that you were willing to take certain risks and say that you also have a duty in your role to sort of educate parents and your users to maybe think about things from a different point of view. And so that was completely, an eye-opener for us, because most early childhood sort of clients that we have and have had since then, they're really afraid of risk. Everything needs to be super rounded. Everything has to be, no steps, nothing, because a child might fall. But then, what happens once they leave the school? They're going to fall because they don't know how to deal with a step. And I remember having this conversation with you several times, and you just said, well, we just have to educate the parents.
Yeah.
And they have to understand that this is the real world. I mean, you don't put blades, sharp things all over the place, but the kid needs to learn that the corner of something is sharp, and you need to be very careful about negotiating that, and you need to be able to get on a step and get down without necessarily falling all the time.
Exactly. The whole idea of educating parents and the children about what is a risk and what is a hazard.
Yeah.
A risk is something you can see.
Yeah.
So even when we have the outdoor space and it isn't EPDM flooring, I wanted to move away from that. Actually, it's just helping them see that this space is not meant for the high jumping and the rigorous running, because the GFA just doesn't allow for it.
Yeah.
But it will allow you to skip and to hop and to maybe ride on a tricycle. And we have beautiful footage actually of our infants learning how to negotiate the not so safe steps, right? Because it's gravel.
Yeah.
And they know what to do, and parents watch it and they are amazed. I'm beginning to see some of the elements of our design in other parts of my organization. For example, the mount. I think my peeve over having been a teacher for a long time is that when you tell a story to young children, the perennial frustrating comment would be, I can't see, because there's a big book, but there are 20 kids on the floor.
Yeah.
And I remember coming to you, Cynthia and I coming to you and saying, how do we do this? I mean, because I am also a faculty member, I'm teaching in the IHLs, and they have an auditorium that is tiered, right?
Yeah.
So can we bring that idea into an early childhood space? And when you designed the mount, it was, it was so simple, but why didn't we think of that, as early childhood educators? And having worked with you on that, I know I see the mount now very a common feature now in many of the other parts of my organization that have childcare brands.
Yeah.